Elliot Carter stood in his modest auto repair shop on Christmas morning, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. At 35, he had spent more years under car hoods than he cared to count. His shop, tucked away on the outskirts of town, was a second home to him. While others celebrated Christmas surrounded by family, Elliot had chosen to open his doors for anyone in need. Not everyone gets to take a day off, he often told himself, though the emptiness of his shop on holiday mornings sometimes weighed heavily on him. The snow fell gently outside as Elliot adjusted the radio, searching for something festive to keep him company. A small artificial Christmas tree sat on the counter, its blinking lights casting a warm glow. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Just as he settled back into his chair, a car sputtered to a stop in front of the shop. Through the frosted window, Elliot saw a woman step out, bundled in a wool coat, her breath visible in the chilly air. "Excuse me," she called as she opened the door, a mix of relief and embarrassment on her face. "I'm so sorry to bother you on Christmas, but my car just gave out a mile down the road. I didn't know where else to go." Elliot stood and greeted her with a kind smile. "You're not bothering me at all. Let's take a look." The woman introduced herself as Claire Bennett. She explained that she had been on her way to her parents' house with her 7-year-old son, Jamie, when the car began making strange noises. Elliot nodded, listening carefully as they stepped outside. Claire's car, a sleek sedan, looked well maintained at first glance, but the faint smell of burnt oil hinted at trouble. As Elliot popped the hood and began his inspection, Claire crouched beside Jamie, reassuring him that everything would be fine. The boy held a small gift in his lap, clearly eager to reach their destination. Elliot glanced at them and felt a pang of sympathy. "You're lucky you caught it in time," he said after a few minutes. "Looks like a belt snapped, and it's taken out a few other things along the way. It's fixable, but it'll take some time." Claire's face fell. "Oh no. Is there any chance you could?" "I'll get it done today," Elliot interrupted, reading her expression. "You've got somewhere to be, and I'll make sure you get there." Claire's relief was palpable. "Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much this means to us." Elliot waved her thanks away. "Go ahead and wait inside. There's coffee and hot chocolate by the counter. I'll let you know when it's ready." Hours passed as Elliot worked tirelessly in the cold, his hands numb despite his gloves. Claire and Jamie sat inside, the boy occasionally peeking out the window to watch the progress. Elliot couldn't help but smile when he noticed Jamie's wide-eyed curiosity. By late afternoon, the car was running smoothly again. "It's all set," Elliot announced, wiping his hands as he came back inside. Claire sprang to her feet, gratitude written all over her face. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her wallet. Elliot hesitated. He thought about the parts he had used, the labor he had put in, and the long hours he had spent working through the holidays. But then he looked at Jamie, clutching his gift with excitement, and Claire, whose relief was now mixed with a faint trace of worry. "Nothing," Elliot said finally. "It's Christmas. Just get to where you need to be." Claire's jaw dropped. "I can't let you do that. Please, I insist." Elliot shook his head firmly. "Consider it my gift to you. Besides, you've got someone waiting for you, and I'm sure they'll be happier to see you than I would be with a check." Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she hugged him briefly. "You have no idea how much this means to me. Thank you." As the car pulled away, Elliot watched them go, a strange warmth spreading in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt the true spirit of Christmas. He returned to his quiet shop, the hum of Claire's car fading into the distance, unaware that his simple act of kindness was about to set something extraordinary into motion. Elliot woke the day after Christmas feeling more at ease than usual. The previous day's events had stayed with him, replaying in his mind like a comforting melody. He had spent years fixing cars, but rarely had he felt such a connection with the people behind the vehicles. Claire's gratitude, Jamie's beaming smile, those moments reminded him why he had chosen this line of work in the first place. The morning was slow, as it often was after a holiday. Elliot was catching up on paperwork when the phone rang. He reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting another inquiry about oil changes or tune-ups. "Hello, Carter Auto Repair," he said. "Hi, Mr. Carter. This is Robert Bennett. I believe you helped my daughter Claire yesterday with her car," the voice on the other end said. Elliot sat up straighter. "Yes, sir. She and her son were on their way to see you. I hope they made it safely." "They did," Robert replied warmly. "And she hasn't stopped talking about what you did for them. I just wanted to personally thank you. It's rare to meet someone as generous as you these days." Elliot felt a twinge of embarrassment. "I was just happy to help. It didn't feel right to charge them on Christmas." "Well, you didn't just fix a car," Robert said. "You gave my grandson a Christmas he'll never forget, and you made Claire feel like she wasn't alone. That kind of kindness isn't something I take lightly." Elliot smiled, his chest tightening with humility. "It was nothing, really." Robert chuckled. "I don't think you understand just how much it meant. But listen, I'd like to repay you. Is there any chance you'd let me come by the shop sometime this week?" Elliot hesitated. He wasn't used to people going out of their way for him. "There's really no need for that. I was just doing my job." "Humor me," Robert said, his tone good-natured but insistent. "I'll see you soon." Before Elliot could protest further, Robert ended the call. Shaking his head, Elliot returned to his paperwork, convinced the man wouldn't actually show up. But he couldn't deny a growing curiosity about who Robert Bennett was and why he seemed so determined to thank him. 3 days later, as Elliot was tightening a lug nut on a customer's car, a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot. A tall man with silver hair and an easy smile stepped out, dressed in a crisp wool coat. He exuded a kind of quiet confidence that immediately caught Elliot's attention. "Mr. Carter," the man called. Elliot wiped his hands on a rag and approached. "That's me. You must be Robert." Robert extended a hand, his grip firm and warm. "I am. Thanks for taking a moment to chat." "Of course," Elliot said, gesturing toward the shop. "Come on in." They settled into the small office, where the smell of motor oil mingled with the faint aroma of coffee. Robert looked around, taking in the space with an appraising eye. "You've got a good setup here," he said. "Been in business long?" "About 10 years," Elliot replied. "Started with just me and a couple of tools. It's grown slowly since then." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "Claire told me you didn't charge her for the repairs. I want you to know how much that meant to her and to me. My daughter's been through a lot, and she's fiercely independent. But I know how much your kindness lifted her spirits." Elliot shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Like I said, it was Christmas. I just wanted to do something good." "Well, I believe good deeds deserve recognition," Robert said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Elliot. "This is for you." Elliot opened the envelope cautiously, his eyes widening as he saw the stack of bills inside. This is too much," he stammered. "I can't accept this." Robert raised a hand to stop him. "It's $5,000. Consider it a token of my appreciation. And before you say no, let me explain something. I own a chain of auto repair shops across the state. I know what it takes to run a place like this, and I know how rare it is to find someone who puts people above profit." Elliot was speechless, his mind racing. $5,000 was more than he made in a good month. It could cover bills, buy new equipment, even give him a cushion for slower seasons. "There's one more thing," Robert continued. "If you're ever looking for a change or just want to expand your horizons, there's a place for you in my company. I could use someone like you, someone with integrity and skill." Elliot stared at the man, overwhelmed. He had never sought recognition or rewards for what he did. To him, fixing Claire's car had been the right thing to do, plain and simple. But now, he was being offered a chance to change his life in ways he hadn't imagined. "I don't know what to say," he finally managed. "Say you'll think about it," Robert said with a smile. And in the meantime, use that money for whatever you need. You've earned it. As Robert left, Elliot sat in his office, the envelope still in his hands. He looked around the shop that had been his world for so long and felt the stirrings of something new hope. What had started as an ordinary Christmas morning was turning into the beginning of a journey he hadn't seen coming. The next few days passed in a blur for Elliot, though his mind often wandered back to the envelope of cash now tucked safely in his desk drawer. It wasn't just the money that had left him shaken, it was Robert Bennett's words. The idea of stepping beyond his small shop, of being part of something larger, both excited and terrified him. That Friday, Elliot closed up early, unable to focus on his usual routine. He pulled out the envelope and set it on the counter, staring at it as though it held the answers he sought. The money could solve so many problems, yet it felt like more than a gift. It felt like a nudge, a push toward a future he wasn't sure he was ready for. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the shop door opening. He looked up to see Claire Bennett standing there, a warm smile on her face. "Claire," he said, surprised. "What brings you back?" "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, stepping inside. "I just wanted to thank you again, properly this time. And I brought a little something." She held out a basket wrapped in cellophane, filled with homemade cookies, a bottle of sparkling cider, and a small, handwritten card. Elliot took it, his smile widening. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," Claire replied. "But I wanted to. Jamie insisted we bake something for you, and I couldn't say no to him." Elliot chuckled, setting the basket on the counter. "Tell him I said thank you. It means a lot." Claire glanced around the shop, her expression thoughtful. "You know, my dad told me he talked to you." Elliot nodded, leaning against the counter. "He did. He's a very generous man." "He is," Claire agreed. "But so are you. And I think you should consider what he offered." Elliot frowned slightly. "It's a big decision. I've been here so long, it's hard to imagine doing anything else." Claire stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the best opportunities. You gave us the kind of help most people wouldn't even think of offering. Maybe it's time you let someone help you for a change." Her words lingered long after she left. That evening, Elliot sat in his small apartment, the basket of cookies on the table beside him. He opened the card Claire had written and read the simple message inside: "Thank you for giving us a Christmas miracle. You have a rare gift, don't be afraid to share it with the world." He folded the card carefully and placed it in his pocket, the weight of her words settling over him. The next morning, Elliot made a decision. He picked up the phone and called Robert Bennett. "Mr. Bennett, it's Elliot Carter," he said when Robert answered. "I've been thinking about what you said, and I'd like to talk more about that opportunity you mentioned." Robert's voice was warm with approval. "I was hoping you'd call. How about lunch tomorrow? My treat." They met at a local diner, where Robert laid out his vision. He wanted Elliot to manage one of his repair shops, a newer location in need of someone trustworthy and skilled to build its reputation. It was a step up, not just in responsibility but also in pay and resources. "You'd have more support than you do now," Robert explained. "But you'd still be able to do what you love: help people." Elliot listened intently, his doubts slowly giving way to excitement. The thought of leaving his own shop was bittersweet, but the chance to grow, to challenge himself in new ways, was too compelling to ignore. "I'll do it," he said at last, a mixture of nervousness and determination in his voice. Robert beamed. "I think you've made the right choice. Welcome to the team." The transition wasn't easy. Closing his shop felt like saying goodbye to an old friend, but Elliot reminded himself that it wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. He spent the next month preparing for his role at the new location, working closely with Robert to understand the larger operation. When the day finally came to open the doors of the new shop, Elliot felt a rush of pride and anticipation. The space was modern and well-equipped, a far cry from the humble garage he had called home for so long. Yet the core of his work remained the same, helping people get back on the road, one car at a time. On that first day, as he fixed a customer's flat tire, a small voice called out behind him. "Mr. Carter." He turned to see Jamie and Claire walking into the shop, their faces alight with happiness. Jamie held a small toy car, which he handed to Elliot with a shy grin. "It's for good luck," Jamie said. Elliot knelt down, accepting the toy with a smile. "Thanks, buddy. I'll keep it right here on my desk." As he stood, Claire met his gaze, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I'm glad you took the chance," she said. "So am I," Elliot replied, his voice steady. That night, as he locked up the shop and looked out at the snow-covered parking lot, Elliot felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something far greater, and he couldn't wait to see where the road would take him next. Elliot's new position as manager of the repair shop quickly became a blend of challenges and triumphs. The first few weeks were intense, training new employees, streamlining operations, and making sure every customer left satisfied. But the energy of the place invigorated him. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't just maintaining a business but building something meaningful. Word spread quickly about the shop's new management. Robert's reputation had already drawn a steady stream of customers, but Elliot's personal touch turned many of them into loyal regulars. He was the kind of person who remembered names, asked about families, and made everyone feel like their problems mattered. It didn't take long before the shop earned a reputation as the friendliest and most reliable in town. One afternoon, as Elliot was inspecting the undercarriage of a truck, a familiar voice interrupted him. "Still getting your hands dirty, I see," Robert said, standing near the open garage door. Elliot slid out from under the truck, grinning. "Old habits die hard. I can't just stand around while everyone else does the work." Robert chuckled, handing Elliot a clipboard. "That's why this place is thriving. Numbers are already up 20%, and customers are leaving glowing reviews. I knew you were the right person for the job." Elliot looked at the clipboard, seeing the statistics laid out in black and white. It was gratifying to see his efforts paying off, but he still felt there was more he could do. "Thank you for trusting me with this," he said sincerely. Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've earned it. And I think you're just getting started." As the weeks turned into months, Elliot began to notice something unexpected. The connections he had made in his small town shop didn't disappear when he moved to this larger operation. They grew. Customers from his old garage started showing up, some driving miles out of their way just to have him work on their cars. One day, Claire and Jamie visited again, this time bringing Claire's father, Robert, along. Elliot hadn't seen Jamie this excited since the day he fixed their car. The boy raced to the waiting area where the toy car he had gifted Elliot sat proudly on the manager's desk. "You kept it," Jamie said, grinning. "Of course," Elliot replied. "It's my good luck charm." Robert leaned in, speaking softly enough for only Elliot to hear. "You know, Claire's been telling me how much Jamie looks up to you. That boy thinks you're a hero." Elliot blinked in surprise. "Me? I just fix cars." Robert shook his head, smiling. "You do much more than that, Elliot. You showed him what kindness looks like. That's a lesson he'll never forget." Elliot was touched, though he didn't know how to respond. He glanced at Jamie, who was now chatting animatedly with a technician, and felt a sense of responsibility he hadn't fully acknowledged before. One evening, as Elliot was locking up, he saw a young woman standing by her car in the parking lot, looking frustrated. "Need some help?" he called out. She turned, startled, then smiled sheepishly. "I think the battery's dead. I was just about to call someone." Elliot grabbed a portable jump starter from the shop and walked over. Within minutes, the car roared back to life. "Thank you so much," the woman said. "How much do I owe you?" Elliot shook his head. "Don't worry about it. Just glad I could help." As she drove off, Elliot stood in the quiet parking lot, reflecting on how much his life had changed. What had started as a simple act of kindness for Claire and Jamie had spiraled into opportunities he never imagined. But the core of it all, helping people, one small gesture at a time, remained the same. For the first time in years, Elliot felt not just content but deeply fulfilled. He had built something new, planted fresh roots in a larger community, and touched lives in ways he hadn't expected. And though the path ahead was uncertain, he was ready for whatever came next. That winter, as the holiday season approached, Elliot found himself reminiscing about the previous Christmas, the day that had changed everything. On a quiet evening at the shop, he pulled out the small toy car Jamie had given him and placed it on his workbench. It was a symbol of how far he'd come, a reminder that kindness could spark something extraordinary. He was lost in thought when the doorbell jingled. Looking up, he saw Robert Bennett standing there, his coat dusted with snow. "Robert," Elliot said, smiling. "What brings you here so late?" Robert grinned, his eyes twinkling. "I've got something for you." He handed Elliot a sealed envelope. Elliot opened it cautiously, his brow furrowing as he read the contents. "It's a contract," Robert explained. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I want you to become a partner in the company. You've turned this place into something remarkable, and I can't imagine anyone better to help lead the business going forward." Elliot stared at the document, stunned. "Partner? Are you serious?" "Completely," Robert said. "You've earned it. And honestly, it's not just about what you've done for the shop, it's about who you are. The way you treat people, the way you inspire others, you have something money can't buy." Elliot was silent for a long moment, the weight of the offer settling over him. Finally, he looked up at Robert, his voice steady. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." Robert smiled knowingly. "You said the same thing when I offered you this job. And look at what you've accomplished." Elliot chuckled, shaking his head. "You've got a point." "So, what do you say?" Robert asked, extending a hand. Elliot took it, his grip firm. "Let's do it." That Christmas, Elliot stood in the shop, now fully decorated with lights and garlands, as employees and customers mingled during the holiday open house. Claire and Jamie arrived early, Jamie proudly helping Elliot hang ornaments on a makeshift tree in the waiting area. As the night wound down, Elliot stood by the window watching the snow fall outside. Claire joined him, holding 2 cups of cocoa. "You did all this," she said, gesturing to the bustling shop. "You brought people together." Elliot took a sip of his cocoa, a contented smile on his face. "I had a lot of help. And it all started with a broken car and a boy who reminded me why I love what I do." Claire looked at him, her eyes soft. "Well, I think Jamie and I got the better end of the deal." Elliot turned to her, his heart full. "I think we all did." As laughter and warmth filled the shop, Elliot felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had taken him on a journey he never could have imagined, but one thing was certain: kindness had led the way. And it always would.